Hi again then guys, and welcome to another circuit spec setup for Gran Turismo Sport once again. And of course we're working our way through circuit setups for the Group 2 Super GT cars, the Nissan GTR, then the Lexus, and now finally the Honda. Now I have to say, after retuning this car and using the tune that I have here, I actually like the NSX a lot more. I know a lot of people liked it already. I prefer the front engine rear wheel drive layout in most of my race cars. Pretty much anything except prototypes, but I have to say this one does a very, very good job of converting people like myself who aren't quite as much of a fan of, say, mid-engine alternatives into potentially using them. Now, as with the other two, and again you can see this from the title of the video, it is balance of performance friendly, so you don't have to decrease the weight or increase the power. It's more about the tuning settings, so I'd recommend having traction control off. But as always, this tune is designed to be very accessible, very easy to use. So if you are still less experienced, maybe even a beginner, you've won the car for instance, then you could have traction control on if you want to, but of course you want to work to having none because you will ultimately be quicker. Now we've got racing hards on it. You can change them up if you want to, but a lot of people don't bother to. As far as suspension, I've dropped the back to match the front end, 50mm front and rear. The frequency we've got on 4. Anti-roll I've left on 7 on the front, but then changed it to 5 on the back. The compression on the dampers we've got on 55, rebound on 85. I'm running 1 degree of camber. You could run it with none, and I would recommend working towards that point because it's more tyre contact to the road. Of course, camber can help as well because when you're cornering, the weight is shifting around more, so the tyres aren't exactly flat, of course, not like they would be with a drag car most of the time. So, of course, camber isn't your enemy. You can give it some if you want to. I just personally like going without it, if at all possible. I like to rely more on the diff. As far as the tow, we've got none of that at all. I never do, of course, but again, if you want to give it a try, by all means you can. We're running maximum downforce. Again, it just makes it a lot easier to work with on technical circuits. But if you do want more top-end speed, also more top-end acceleration, which a lot of people forget about, then of course you could drop that a little bit. Or if you just want a bit more of a challenge to basically increase your learning curve, learn how to drive a more slippery car more quickly. As far as the diff, I've got halfway on initial torque, then as low as possible for both the acceleration and deceleration. Again, the diff settings are, of course, very personal to each driver, so feel free to try this out. If you don't like it, you could change the settings, try something else. The diff alone makes a massive difference to how a car performs, so don't be afraid to change it up, because at the end of the day, if you change it and don't like it, you can always just come back to this and try again. That's the beauty of it. It's kind of like your own saved setup, if you will. Then as far as the gearbox, I haven't touched that at all because, again, we're running stock weight, stock power, so you only need to touch the gears if you specifically want to, because at the end of the day, it's more of a handling and a grip tune rather than a straight line tune. Of course, if you do increase the power in particular, or decrease it, you will want to change the ratios just to get more out of the car. Longer ratios for more power, shorter ratios for less power, generally speaking. So that's it for the overall tune. As always, tons of room for variation to what you personally want to try. So, of course, all that remains is to, as we always do, take it to a circuit to see what it can actually do. Now, as I mentioned, of course, in the rivals match between this and the other two Super GT cars, I'm not as much of a fan of this one as the other two, which is ironic because I'm actually more a fan of the road version of this NSX than either of the other two. I'm much more of a fan. In racing form, though, it's just not quite there for me. However, as I said at the start of this video, once I re-spec the tune, in effect, dropped the power, increased the weight back to stock again, and actually altered some of the settings, the diff and the suspension in particular, I actually like it a lot more now. It's a lot more controlled, it feels like it's a lot more sure-footed, basically. Now, ultimately, that might mean that it's not quite as quick a tune as some others. Perhaps, I haven't compared it, so I can't say for sure. Doubtless there are some faster tunes out there, of course. But for those who do want to give it a try, especially newer drivers who don't like mid-engine cars, for instance, such as the mid-engine tunes that I've done for the Audi R8, various others in the past, or if you are a more experienced driver, just give the tune a go and see if you like it. Of course, you could combine what I've done with stuff that you've done and maybe make a hybrid of the two that's even quicker than either of them on their own. That is kind of the whole point of tuning. We all learn from each other and increase collectively as a whole, which is what racing should all be about, really, as far as I'm concerned. So, if you do decide to use this tune, there are tons more that you can check out on the channel, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.